Tonight, if the lights went out and the street got loud, most people would do the same two things. They'd either panic by security, or they'd sit there hoping their house simply won't be noticed. And that's the problem. Hope is not a defense plan. During the Cold War, families didn't prepare for comfort. They prepared for pressure, uncertainty, and the ugly possibility of disorder. And they learned something brutally practical. You don't need your home to be unbeatable. You need it to be a bad choice. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 10 Cold War methods that make a normal house quieter, harder to read, slower to approach, and far less tempting to anyone looking for easy targets, without turning your life into a fortress fantasy. And there's one method in here that sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but it decides more outcomes than alarms ever will, because it changes what people think they're seeing from the street. But before we get to the clever tools and the clever routines, we have to start with the first Cold War rule of home defense, the one most modern households get completely backwards. The first Cold War method is almost disappointingly unglamorous, but it's the foundation of everything else. Don't look like the easiest win on the street. In that era, governments didn't just think about bombs. They thought about what happens to ordinary neighborhoods when fear spreads faster than information, when power is unreliable, when rumor becomes currency, and when people start making decisions based on what they think they can see and what they understood. The part we've forgotten is that visibility is value. If your house advertises warmth, food, light, movement, and comfort while everyone else looks flat and quiet, you just painted a target without meaning to. So before we talk about defending, we talk about not announcing. The simplest version is light discipline. Not living in darkness, but controlling what escapes your windows. You don't need to turn your home into a cave. You need to stop broadcasting a glowing stage set to anyone outside. That means at night, you treat windows like screens because from the street they are. You pull heavy curtains or proper blackout blinds. You stop leaving bright rooms right at the front of the house, and you move your strongest light sources deeper inside. So the room works for you, but doesn't perform for strangers. Even small leaks matter. The thin slice of light around a curtain edge, the harsh rectangle of a television facing a window, the bluish glare of a phone held at head height. Not because someone is magically watching you, but because in a tense environment people scan for contrast, and contrast is what the human eye grabs first. The Cold War mindset is not hide, it's blend. If you must use light, use it like a craftsman. Local, low, and directed downwards, so it makes one small area functional rather than turning the whole house into a lantern. Then you layer method number 2, window denial. This sounds extreme until you understand the psychology. Looters don't only choose targets based on what they want, they choose based on what they can verify quickly. A bare window is an invitation to estimate you, your layout, your supplies, your movement, and your vulnerability. If they can't read your interior in 2 seconds, your house becomes less interesting. That's why temporary window covers existed in civil defense thinking, not just for blast or debris, but for privacy under stress. In modern terms, it can be as simple as having pre-cut panels or opaque coverings ready for ground floor windows, fitted in a way that reduces light spill and blocks clear silhouettes, without trapping you inside. And that last clause matters. Nothing in this video is worth compromising safe exits or basic fire safety, because the goal is resilience, not drama. The third method is what I call normal outside, stubborn at the seams, discreet hardening. Most break-ins and most opportunistic looting is not a movie scene with perfect tools. It's a rushed attempt at the obvious points. The front door, the easiest window latch, the weak frame, the place that gives quickly. Your job is not to win a siege. It's to add friction, because friction changes behavior. A solid door with a decent lock is only as strong as the frame and the fixings holding it. So the quiet Cold War move is reinforcing the boring parts. The strike area, the hinges, the fit of the door, the consistency of keeping it locked, and the removal of little habits that scream easy entry. Like leaving spare keys in predictable places, leaving ladders accessible, or letting dense shrubbery create a perfect blind spot right next to a window. You want your home to feel like it will cost time and noise, and time and noise are exactly what opportunists hate. And if all of this feels almost too mundane, good, that's the point. The most effective home defense starts before anyone touches your property, by making sure there's nothing in the first impression that says, try here. But now comes the uncomfortable pivot. Even a perfectly uninteresting house fails if it's surprised, because surprise is what turns calm people into panicked people. And the next Cold War layer is how you buy yourself those first crucial seconds before a threat is already at the door. The next Cold War layer is early warning and friction, because in any tense period, what saves you isn't bravado, it's the simple ability to act before you're already cornered. That mindset runs through civil defense thinking in the late Cold War years. Not just what do you do, but how do you buy yourself time to do it? The same logic behind public guidance like the British Protect and Survive materials that were produced in the 1970s and then published for wider public access in 1980. And the first method here is the cheapest and most unfairly ignored. Make approach noisy. People love silent, tidy paths, smooth paving, neat side gates, soft ground. But the Cold War answer is the opposite. You want the key approach points to betray footsteps. Gravel is the classic because it's honest. It doesn't need power, it doesn't need a subscription, and it doesn't care what mood you're in. The point is not to catch anyone. The point is that sound creates hesitation, and hesitation creates choices. Even a couple of seconds of someone's there is the difference between calmly locking an inner door and realizing too late you've got a stranger already in the threshold. The second method is lighting, but used the right way around. Modern homes often do the worst combination. They keep the outside dark and the inside bright, which turns the windows into a shop display. And you can see why police advice so often focuses on routines that avoid advertising valuables and on building habits that don't accidentally make your home look inviting or easy to read. The Cold War approach is to put the emphasis outward. You want enough exterior light to remove hiding places and make movement feel exposed, while keeping your interior light disciplined so you're not broadcasting who's awake, where they are, and what they have. And the third method is layers, which sounds dramatic until you realize it's just the common sense idea of making entry a process rather than a single moment. A front door should not be the only meaningful boundary between outside and inside. You want a second barrier, a hallway door, a locked inner porch, a simple internal line that forces anyone trying their luck to take extra steps, make extra noise, and spend extra time. You're not trying to win a fight. You're trying to make the attempt feel slow and exposed, because opportunists don't want effort and they don't want attention. That's why I keep coming back to the same Cold War principle. Delay beats drama. But there's a catch. Time is only useful if you know what to do with it. And under stress, most households don't fail at locks. They fail at coordination, which is where the Cold War methods get quietly clever. This is where Cold War home defense stops being stuff you install and becomes what actually keeps people steady under pressure, a simple social system. Because when stress spikes, households don't usually fail because they lack equipment. They fail because nobody knows who to contact, what to say, or what normal even looks like anymore, and confusion is exactly what opportunists feed on. The Cold War logic was always community first, not in a grand ideological way, but in the practical sense that small networks beat isolated panic. And you can still see that mindset in modern emergency planning guidance, where the boring but powerful recommendation is to build an emergency contact list and a basic communication plan before anything happens. Ready.gov, for example, frames family communication planning around a few straightforward steps: collecting contacts, sharing them, and practicing how you'd reconnect. Because a plan you've never rehearsed is just a comforting story. And on the community side, UK resilience guidance literally includes the idea of a local emergency contact list or telephone tree, not as some dramatic spy network, but as a quiet way to make sure information moves faster than rumor when phones are patchy and everyone's asking the same question at once. Even neighborhood watch groups have described supporters setting up phone trees and connecting neighbors during real-world disruption, which is the exact point. You don't build this for the apocalypse. You build it for the messy middle where help is delayed and the street is unsettled. So Method 7 is a modern phone tree you can explain in 10 seconds. 3 or 4 households agree that if anything feels wrong, you don't blast the group chat with panic. You send a calm, standard message to one person and the chain does the rest. Short, factual, and boring on purpose. What happened, where, and whether anyone needs help. Method 8 is a domestic code word, and it's not a movie password. It's a normal phrase that sounds harmless on the phone, but carries a clear meaning inside your family. Like, I've left the oven on, meaning I'm not safe to talk, and another phrase meaning all clear. The power of that is psychological. It prevents a scared person from having to improvise under pressure. It prevents everyone else from guessing. You can even add a simple neighborhood status signal, the kind you'd recognize instantly without opening the door, a basic okay or help marker agreed in advance, which shows up in some neighborhood preparedness guidance as a way to communicate status when you can't reach people directly. None of this is about acting tough. It's about removing uncertainty, because uncertainty creates noise, and noise creates mistakes. But there's one final piece that decides whether all these clever layers actually work when the moment arrives. What happens inside your home in the first 60 seconds? Who moves where, what gets locked, what gets grabbed, and what gets left behind? Because without that, even the best code word in the world just becomes another message you don't know how to act on. So here's the Cold War finish, the part that turns 10 good ideas into one working system. And it's remarkably simple. A 10-minute home defense plan that removes decision-making when your heart rate is high. Because the real danger in any chaotic moment isn't only what's outside. It's the panic inside your own head, the rushing around, the contradictory instructions, the missing keys, the phone on 5%, and the sudden argument about what matters most. In Cold War thinking, resilience was always built around routines that you could execute half awake, which is why your 9th method is a calm room, not a fortress room. A place inside the home that's practical, safe, and boring, with the basics already staged. A charged phone or power bank, a torch, a spare set of keys, any essential medication, a simple first aid kit, a written emergency contact list, and a short card of instructions that anyone in the household can follow without debating. That list sounds small, but it solves a huge percentage of real-world failure, because it stops you turning your entire home into a frantic scavenger hunt. And the moment you create that calm room, you also create 2 routes, not 10, not a complicated map. Just 2, a stay route and a leave route, with a clear meeting point outside that everyone knows in advance. The same kind of basic family planning that modern emergency guidance keeps coming back to for good reason. The stay route is what you do in the first 60 seconds. Light discipline, inner door locked, phone out, code word ready, and one person designated to do the talking, so everyone else isn't shouting overlapping information. The leave route is what you do if staying becomes unsafe. You don't negotiate in the moment. You don't improvise heroics. You simply move along the pre-agreed path and regroup, because your safety is worth more than the contents of a room. Now, the 10th method is the one people resist because it feels emotionally wrong, but it's the most practical. A quick inventory and a priority ladder. Not a spreadsheet, a ladder. At the top, people. Then, essential health items. Then, communications and keys. Then, a few irreplaceables. Everything else is optional. You write it down in plain English. You keep it short enough that a tired person can read it. And once a month you do a 2-minute rehearsal where you time how quickly you can reach the calm room and execute the first steps without arguing. That rehearsal is what turns a plan from a comforting story into a real behavior under stress, which is exactly why the Cold War approach worked. It wasn't about fear, it was about reducing variables. And if you put the whole system together, you can see what you've really built here. You've made your home less visible, harder to read, noisier to approach, slower to breach, and supported by a simple human network that moves information faster than panic. None of this promises invincibility. That's not the goal. The goal is that when someone is scanning for easy wins, your house quietly fails the test. It looks dull, it looks stubborn, it looks like work, and it looks like the kind of place where people already know what to do. And once you understand that, you start to realize something even more unsettling. The most effective Cold War methods weren't built for Hollywood threats at all. They were built for the ordinary moments where society gets noisy and rules get blurry. And there's still a few of those methods that almost nobody talks about anymore.